Hello and welcome to the Devoted Outdoorsman's podcast.
Hello, Devoted Nation. Today on the podcast, we have a pretty sweet guest. His name is Mark Harrison, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about how he got introduced into the outdoors, and we're going to talk a little bit about traditional archery after that. So, Mark, how did you get introduced into the outdoors?
I kind of just picked it up from one of my family members. You know, we always looked up to him as a hunter, and he really wasn't much of one, it turns out. I didn't really know it at the time. And so I ended up picking up a Jennings Buckmaster, go figure, just like James Reese had, and went out and just learned. I think I was around, 15 years old or so. And picked it up, didn't understand what I was doing, had no clue. Went to an archery shop. They sort of took me under their wing and kind of taught me how to set my bow up, and pretty much been self-taught ever since. And I couldn't live without it now.
So your introduction to hunting and stuff like that, the outdoors, was by archery.
Yes. See, I started off as archery. I came from Connecticut. You know, you pretty much got to be a huge landowner in order to hunt centerfire rifle up there. We had one of the longest archery seasons in the United States at the time. So if you wanted to hunt, you were shooting archery. I mean, you really only had a couple weeks or so to go guns, so it just didn't make sense. I still didn't have the property. But, Connecticut's mostly an archery state. I started dabbling with longbow and recurve, but nothing serious up until recently. I mean, I got very, very serious in the past 2-3 years and just transitioned completely.
So now you're located in Florida, correct?
Yeah. From the freezing world of the Northeast down to it's hot. I mean, every single film I've ever done for TV, for, web shows or anything, my film always starts off going, it's way too hot. That I came down here and, I love it. I absolutely love it. This state, you could hunt 7 days a week. And, we've got wild pigs, we've got bobcat, we've got deer, we've got turkey, we've got bow fishing. So instead of being a seasonal thing like it is up north, down here, I've got a bow in my hand every day of the week. Every day.
And do you guys have a pretty good population of whitetail down there, correct?
Yes and no. I'm in Southwest Florida. It's like the first thing somebody says whenever, I see them going deer hunting in Florida, they're like, there's deer down there? Really? Like, the north part of the state of Florida, there's a ton. And an absolute ton of deer. Southwest Florida, we've got them in pockets. That it took me probably 6 years to get a good property down here, which I finally acquired last year. That, if you get a deer in Florida, you're already a god in Southwest Florida. It's like, you got one, wow! But now we're able to start chasing big bucks. My new property, we're seeing on average about 30, 35 deer every single sit. Versus my old properties, if we see one, we were jumping for joy. But, it's definitely getting better and better down here, as long as we can keep the panthers at bay, which is not easy.
35 deer per sit is pretty good, man. I don't care where you're at.
Yeah, in Florida. And crazy thing is, I've got big deer. Like, the second thing people say, like, oh, Florida's got tiny deer. Our does are pretty small. I'd have to say that, for example, I took one last year and everybody's like, what are you doing shooting a fawn? I'm like, this isn't a fawn. This is a full-size doe. And, it kind of got everybody interested in what we were doing, the fact that we were all the way down here. But we have some big bucks. And, not big bodies. We're not talking about Iowa deer or Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, stuff like that. We don't get that big 200, 300-pound deer, but we get some really, really big racks down here. And I have no clue why, because, this is a new thing to us. We're used to seeing smaller deer always, but this new property is just insane. My poor wife, she had a monster come underneath her tree stand last year, self-filming, and we're hunting, go figure, by the main road going into this big property, because for some reason that's where the big bucks sit. And this buck just walks 10, 15 yards from her, turns broadside, a car drives by, and the deer takes off. The end. But it's tough. It's definitely tough hunting here, especially because, our rut is unpredictable. When people ask when our season opens, we open July 28th. And most of the time, July 28th, we've already missed the rut. The rut is over. really, really tough stake. You know, instead of sitting there planning on, you know, our November rut hunt, here it's the more time you spend in the woods, the better chances you're getting a buck, because there's no patterning, there's no nothing with these guys.
So how do you, like, what are your tactics on getting it in where the deer are? Is it like a pinch point type thing or a water source, or how do you guys do?
Well, the water source opening day last year was hurricanes. So we actually went 18 feet underwater. So what we end up doing is once deer season kicks in, hunt anywhere that's dry is one of the main tactics, but it's more sit and wait and sit and wait. Like our tactics are more similar to, say, late season muzzleloader hunts up north, that you're just going to sit out in the woods and hope and pray something comes walking by. I mean, we have tricks and stuff to help bring them in. You know, I use MWD. You know, it's a stinky scent attractant that just reeks. You know, fruity smells, corn smells. So you're really trying to lure them into your area, but it really comes down to sitting and waiting, especially with a longbow in your hand. You know, we've had many opportunities that, you know, there's deer at 25 yards, 30 yards, and you just can't shoot that far. You know, some people can. We just choose not to.
You're saying you can shoot 30 yards with your recurve?
Yeah, I can shoot very, very far. I mean, I practice out to, you know, 45, 50 yards, and I do fairly well with it. So it takes a lot of time and a lot of skill to do it, but in the woods, we limit our shots to 20 yards and in. And any good, you know, traditional hunter will tell you the same thing, with the exception of the guys out west. The guys out west, you know, they're elite, man, because, you know, those deer are just so far and the elk are so far. You know, I know guys that reach out 35, 40 with a longbow. I just can't do it ethically.
That completely blows me away, that you guys are shooting, you know, that you can shoot accurately at, you know, 35 or 40 yards. That's, I guess I've never really looked into it, but that's pretty crazy.
Have you never shot one before?
I mean, I've messed around with them from time to time, you know, at like 15 or 20 yards, and I was pretty horrible, so I kind of like set that down and never picked it back up again.
It's tough. You know, my opinion is I think everybody in the world should pick up a longbow before picking up a compound. That it's very easy, and it's easy to get people involved. For example, you know, I'm part of Crosshairs TV. Todd Hare, Clay Hare, the two brothers, you know, they got their wives and girlfriends into shooting these things. Like, you know, they were not into this whole compound stuff. You know, there's too many gadgets, doodads, you know, you got to have your release, you got to line this up with that. You pick up a longbow and just put it in somebody's hands that's never shot. Tell them to draw back, hold, look where you want to hit, and let the arrow fly. I mean, it's very, very simple. That Todd just got his wife for the first time to shoot a longbow the other night. She was driving tacks at 20 yards. That it's a lot easier than you think to get started, but to really perfect it, it takes a long time. For some people, you know, I've been pretty hardcore for the past 2-3 years. And just recently, honestly, I just totally stepped my game up recently in the past 6 months to really, truly working on my form, my release, my anchor. And really, it's a mental game. I think that's the best way to explain it. This is more of a mental thing than a physical thing. You know, because we're not using pins, we have no rests, we have no sights. It's all just getting out there and really keeping your head cool and making sure that you're doing the same thing every time. But it's pretty easy. I mean, my wife is a pro. I mean, it drives me crazy. Women can outshoot any man with a longbow. I have no clue why. They just pick it up, and I've asked a few women why, you know, they just shoot so well. Like, what are they thinking about? And my wife tells me I'm thinking about nothing. I'm like, well, what do you mean you're thinking about nothing? Like, come on. Like, I'm thinking about, is my shoulder right? Is my anchor point correct? She goes, no. I just draw back, and I just know it's going to hit where I'm going to point at it, and that's it.
That's awesome.
It's upsetting. It's very upsetting to watch her shoot. Like, I've trained. I train like every single day. No matter what, 7 days a week, I'll put a minimum of 25 arrows down the range. My wife, she won't pick up her bow for a week, grab it, pick it up, go outside, and just bullseye every single time. I hate watching her do it.
So are you shooting 3 fingers under, or are you using some type of release?
I'm shooting 3 under. You know, the old days Robin Hood style is what I like to call it. You know, a split finger. I don't know, like, as a hunter for me, shooting 25 yards or under 300 makes more sense. That if we need to actually look at the arrow, which I really don't, but if we needed to, the arrow is closer to our eyes, so we kind of can guess a little bit better where it's going to go versus split finger. You would be able to shoot a further distance kind of looking at that arrow. So the 300 made more sense to me. I've never been able to shoot a release. I only know like maybe one person that shoots a release with a traditional bow.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was a thing, using a release with a traditional bow or not.
A few people did back in the 70s and 80s, and it really never caught on. You know, shooting with your fingers it just works better. At least I think. I mean, I think just about anybody that shoots traditional is going to say the same thing. I mean, you could put sights on these, Bear Archery used to make sights and stuff to go on their bows and rest and everything. I just like a piece of stick with a sharp end on it sitting on top of the arrow shelf with no sights, no nothing. I mean, you really become one with the bow.
What type of weight are you guys drawing on these bows?
We break a lot of the rules. Anybody getting into traditional, the first thing that they think is like, oh, this is a stick and string. Like, I need to be shooting 65, 70 pounds to kill an animal. I'm shooting 47 pounds. That's it. But, and that's all you really need. 47 pounds is more than enough to kill any big game animal in the United States. And some African ones, I guess. But, the thing is, like, you really don't need the weight. You just want the math behind it. Like, my arrow setup breaks rules. That I'm running about a 450 grain arrow. That's light. That's very, very light. If you talk to the trad world, they're like, oh, in order to go elk hunting, you need to have a 600 grain arrow. You need to really plow through something. My issue with a heavy arrow is, sure, it's going to penetrate better than a light arrow, but if my animal moves or jumps the string because my arrow is too slow, I'm not going to hit where I'm actually aiming. So a lighter arrow, well placed, is far more efficient than a heavy arrow just trying to powerhouse through. So with our setup, the other catch is too, I'm throwing 225 grain up front for a broadhead. And breaking rules again, my broadhead is 2 1/8 inch wide. People look at me, they're like, what are you, spearing animals with that thing? The thing is huge. And I felt the same way. But the design of it, I haven't had an issue shooting wild boars yet down here. I haven't had an issue shooting deer, and they just keep going through. And like I said, it's just breaking rules. We also shoot very strange feather setup. We shoot 2 feathers. Just about everybody else in the world is shooting 3 feathers. Some of them are shooting 4. We don't need it. We start shooting the 2, and people are like, what are you doing and why? And it's way more than enough. I mean, I'm accurate. Like I said, 40, 50 yards playing around in the yard, no problem. I can hit a baseball.
So what is the advantage of shooting just the two feathers?
So 3 feathers, you're going to have a cock feather. You have to have it either pointing up or sideways, whatever your choice is. So when you have to knock an arrow, you have to think about which one's going out. You have to look at it. With 2 feathers, I could just grab my arrow and just put it right in the bow. It doesn't matter. That I could put it upside down, the other way, whatever. There's only 2 ways to put it on, and it's always correct. With a longbow, too, it's called indexing your broadhead. Because I'm throwing this big, giant 2 1/8 inch wide head, I want it completely horizontal. So by having the 2 fletch and the 2-blade broadhead, no matter what way I put it, it's always perfect. So I could actually knock an arrow with my eyes closed. It makes night hunting a lot easier. Also, there's less wind drift. People think that, it's not going to stabilize. Well, it stabilizes way more than enough. But as the feather spins, the 2 fletch, there comes a point that there's no wind actually hitting it. So it will drift less in wind than, say, a 3 or even 4 fletch. It's faster. It's quieter. And for a hunter, absolutely. 2 fletch is always the way to go for a 25-yard and in guy. If we're going to start shooting Olympic and shooting, 60, 70 yards, of course I'm going to start throwing 3 fletch. I mean, without a doubt, because, we just need it to be 100% accurate to get that far. With 25 yards and in, there's no difference in the 2 setups.
So what is the brand of the broadheads that you're shooting if you want to...
I'm shooting, watching my bow and my broadheads are made by the same company. The maker is Jim Neves from Centaur Archery. He's out in Hamilton, Montana. I mean, his bows, I've shot a lot of bows in my life. I started off with, the old school vintage, bear archery and stuff. I shot ILF for a little while with Tribe Archery. And Jim had contacted me about working with him finally. And I wanted to. I called them the Hot Rods or the Ferraris. And he called me up one day. He's like, I want to work with you. I want to work with you. I played it cool. I'm like, oh, whatever, dude. Kind of. I guess so. Truth is, I've been dying to get into these bows. And he built me my first one. And man, I just, there's no words that can describe them. I mean, the bows are that amazing. I mean, expensive. Don't get me wrong, they cost a pretty penny, but that's what happens when you start getting into the elite stuff. But, so he made me my longbow, and he makes his own broadheads called the Centaur Battle Axes. They scare the heck out of people. I mean, who in their right mind would throw a 2 1/8 inch wide broadhead cut on contact? I mean, this thing seriously looks like I'm going to go out and harpoon a whale. But they fly and they penetrate. I didn't believe in him. I'm not going to lie. I'm like, this guy's crazy sending me these heads. He's out of his mind. Until I used them. And my first animal I ever took with a battle axe, I hit further back. I freaked out. I was so excited. I hit like a 300-pound boar. I livered him. And, here I am thinking I'm going to be tracking this thing for 2 days. It's going to end up, on the next 3 properties over. He was dead. 20 yards, 30 yards in. It was just insane. I mean, just bled out so fast. I mean, almost instantaneous. And the blood trail, I've never seen anything like it before. Normally, like in Florida down here, because it's so thick, we're on our hands and knees tracking. And we actually take little toilet paper squares to try to mark, where the blood is. That way we could also find our way back out. This was just me just walking. I didn't even have to think about looking for blood. I didn't have to do anything. Just walked right up to my animal.
Man, that's crazy. And that toilet paper thing is actually a really good idea, and I'm going to start doing that because
you haven't tried that?
No, I've tried like the little orange flags, and I've actually gotten myself confused with my flags before because I was looking down and I was looking for blood, and I would put a flag on this tree, and then I put one on this tree, and then before I noticed, I look up and I got flags that are crossing each other.
The toilet paper is the way to go, man. Get the cheap junk toilet paper, and I mean the stuff that you just look at it and it wants to fall apart. And the reason why we did it, I actually was taught this at my hunter safety course. I took it up in Connecticut. This older guy, Tom Renzulli, he was teaching it. Instead of being like the modern courses that they're just like, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. This guy taught the class with ethics, how to track an animal. I mean, nobody teaches that anymore. It drove me crazy. So Tom, he was talking about how you take a toilet paper square, and if you see a spot of blood, you drop a toilet paper square on it. And then you can go, say, 5, 6 feet, if you have a good blood trail, drop another square on it. And what happens is if you lose the blood, you can get kind of an idea of which direction it was going. Or, you lose blood altogether, at least you could start over again and start directly where the last piece was. And the toilet paper is biodegradable. I mean, state land, they might get a little upset. They'll consider it littering. Pick it up as you go. But my private land, I leave the toilet paper squares. I mean, it takes a few weeks, maybe a month to break down completely and disappear, but it's the only way to go, especially like you being in Oklahoma, You when you're walking through the woods, you can go, okay, I walked past the big oak. All right, the river's on my left. Let's walk over here, and, we're going up the little hill. You guys have reference points out there. We don't have any here. We walked past the palm tree. We walked past another palm tree. Oh, that palm tree looked like the last one we walked past. Like, you can get lost very easy. If it weren't for toilet paper, honestly, I'd probably be dead because I'd get lost in the woods so bad out here that I wouldn't be able to find my way out. The second point is that I shot a pig the other day, and I had a mediocre blood trail. I still have no clue what happened on this. I think I hit no man's land, to be honest with you. And I had no blood in the beginning. And I didn't know what to do. And go figure, the last pig that I had shot, I went over to the old toilet paper trail. Sure enough, that pig had run the old toilet paper trail. So I was actually staying on the old track and ended up finding this thing way, way up in, but on the same old track. So it was actually helpful leaving the old squares.
Kind of gave you like a point of where you're like, okay, I might know where this hog's going.
Yeah, it took the same exact trail, which was just crazy. You know, we really don't have, like, good trails down here. Like, these things just kind of run where they want to go. You know, patterning them, forget it. You know, we hunt pigs like we hunt bears. Wait and bait. I mean, yes, you can go out there and try to find some open areas and hope a pig might meander by, but with a longbow, we really are a wait and bait kind of thing with hogs.
So what animals have you harvested with your traditional setup?
I've done I'm sorry, I haven't done the turkey yet. I've done deer and hogs, tons of rabbits, tons of squirrels, which honestly I think small game is the most exciting thing there is with a trad bow. Put it this way, when you first pick up a trad bow, like Clay here from Crosshairs, this is his first year shooting traditional. And he shot some monster stuff before. And I've got him sitting at my house down here, teaching him how to shoot a longbow. And a stupid squirrel comes by. Squirrel season's open. I said, Clay, you draw down on that squirrel, take him out. He's like, what, really? He draws down, he misses. He misses by like 6-8 inches. He was screaming for joy, going, oh, you see how close I got? Did you see how close? If that was a compound, he would have been mad. Like, how could I possibly miss with a compound? You know, traditional archery, there's an excitement even in with the misses. So although I've only harvested, I've harvested a lot of pigs. A lot of them with a longbow. I haven't really hit too many other animals yet. Just haven't had the opportunity. But it's still so much more exciting than anything else you could ever pick up. Like, that's why I decided to go full-time traditional. That last year I decided to go muzzleloader, and I got my deer with my muzzleloader, and the joy wasn't there. You know, the challenge wasn't there. And that's what this really is, switching over to, although it's really, really hard, we're going to harvest less animals. Yes, we're going to have misses and stuff. It's still 10 times better than anything you could ever do.
So what are the regulations down there in Florida for the hogs?
Nothing. There isn't a single regulation whatsoever on these things down here. You can, 7 days a week on private land, there's no licensing. You can hunt them with any weapon. You can go out and sharpen a spoon if you want and go and kill a pig with it tonight. We can light them up. We could trap them live. It's the Wild West. You can do whatever you want with them because they're an invasive species.
Yeah, it's real similar to that here in Oklahoma. There's not a lot of laws around what's going on with them, except on government land. There's quite a few stipulations on those. But a big thing that I've been seeing in the past few years is hunting with dogs, which I find kind of interesting. I don't know if they do a lot of that down there.
They do. I have my issues with dog hunters. You know, private land is very hard to acquire down here. So everybody wants to hunt, but nobody wants to do the homework to get their own personal property. So they all trespass. And that's the issue that I have with dog hunters. They call it slipping. Oh, my dog's accidentally slipped into your property and caught a hog. And you're trespassing. You know, that's really what it comes down to. There's a few good guys down here. Not too many of them, especially down in my area. But it's fun. You know, running dogs is definitely a lot of fun. It's a lot harder than people think. They think that you're just going out and the dogs are doing all the work. You're legitimately running like a crazy person trying to keep up with these dogs. Yeah,
on one of the public land pieces that I hunt here, last year I had an issue. I'd kind of gone in and scouted these few spots around this lake. And I was set up on this creek. Well, like almost exactly as soon as I got set up on this creek, I could hear the dogs coming. So kind of understand, you know, they're not necessarily supposed to run them on public land during big game season, so like deer season or turkey season, anything like that.
Yeah,
they're not allowed dogs in there. But like you're saying, you know, we can't control our dogs running across into the public land area. So that's become kind of an issue here, but.
You know, because it's really illegal. You know, if you can't control your dogs, then you don't belong in the woods. That's like saying that I can't control my rifle from shooting into my neighbor's yard. You know, it's ethics. You know, you really got to keep your animals under control, just like we have to keep our guns, our bows, and everything pointed in the safe direction. But some of these guys just don't respect rules, and that's part of the problem that we have in the hunting world nowadays. That people just don't follow the rules.
I agree with that 100%. There's just some people that, and especially like you were saying, when it comes to private land, it's becoming harder and harder to come by in every state. And I think that has a lot to do with it. People don't want to follow the rules. People don't want to be respectful. People, one person gets permission on some land and puts a bad taste in that landowner's mouth, and now never again will he allow someone to come out on his property.
Exactly. That's the situation I have with my hog property up here. I know it's crazy. I'm actually hunting directly in town. And when people find out that I'm hunting in town, they're like, I don't understand. Like, you'd think like this is just like a real big city and everything. There's one parcel. That's about 400, 500 acres right in the middle of town that a cattle farmer owns. And it's loaded with pigs. Absolutely loaded to the point that they're just spewing out everywhere. And I called the guy up. I contacted him over and over again, and he refused to give permission because the last 20 people that he tried letting him in, they all ruined it. So he just refused. So what do you do in a situation, that there's pigs there, but you can't get permission? On this big property, go to a small property is what I did. I ended up contacting landowners around the area, and none of them were big parcels, so we ended up asking for permission for multiple parcels that were technically just building lots. 30 building lots later, we've got ourselves a decent little chunk of property. So we lure the hogs off of this giant property, bring them right into ours, and we get to hunt. A lot of people don't think that you don't need a few thousand acres of land to hunt. We're probably accessing only 5 acres of land at most, and we just hammer pigs 7 days a week, year round.
Yeah, and one of the things that I do when it comes to obtaining permission from a landowner is, I don't necessarily always go in straight for like, hey, can I deer hunt on your property? I'll start when it's, squirrel season in the summertime. I'll go out and I'll be like, hey, do you mind if I squirrel hunt out here, whatever it may be? And a lot of times people are a little bit more lenient when it comes to that than like, oh, can I come out here and can I shoot your deer? But a lot of times people are okay with me shooting squirrels.
See, people are always adamant, too, with bow hunting. That's how I always got my permission in the past was, everybody's like, oh, you bring a gun out in the woods, that's dangerous. You start saying bow, and all of a sudden, those leery people are like, wow, bow, that's a little bit different, and they're more willing to give permission. Since we switched over to traditional, people are so fascinated with what we're doing that we actually had a person, we called them up for our new deer property. I'm like, yeah, I want to hunt longbow over here. And they're like, you want to do what and why? Really? Like, isn't that kind of hard? And we had a conversation instead of just asking for permission. And they practically begged me to deer hunt their property. I couldn't believe it. Everybody is so open about this traditional hunting. And I tell them, like, oh, how many deer you plan on harvesting this year? Well, I'm hoping for one. It'd be awesome to get one. That's my goal right there. Obviously we do better than that, but it's not an easy thing to do, and it's highly respected. The best thing about traditional shooting is it's a completely different community that, compound hunters, gun hunters, they're kind of at each other's throats nowadays. Oh, you got to shoot this broadhead. Oh, you got to shoot this bow. Traditional shooters they're very supportive of everything that everybody does. Nobody gets trashed. One of my favorite things about it is anything that you harvest with traditional equipment is looked at by everybody as a trophy. I mean, I shot a rabbit, and people are like, oh, my God, I can't believe you killed a rabbit with a longbow. It's amazing. Wow. But if you did it with a gun, it's just so different. Very, very, very supportive.
Yeah, and I think, in the hunting community, we have, our pockets. We have our, archers, we have our rifle hunters, and we have, our traditional. There's all these different pockets, or the dog hunters, And at this point in time, I think that we need to kind of put away our differences and kind of come together, because at this point in time in the world that we live in, we need to bound together, because in one person or one small group may not have a say in certain things, but us together as hunters, we can actually do something about, certain situations that may occur in the future.
So that's what Bow Hunters America has been really done. I was listening to your podcast with James Reese, that page, although it's just a Facebook page, it's not a TV show, it's not a podcast, it's not anything, it's just a group. And he just manages it so well that I can shoot a spike-horn deer and everybody will support me on there. But if I put that same spike-horn deer in, say, Ohio deer hunters, I'll get trashed. I still don't understand why people trash people. It just never made any sense to me. That's why I'm a firm believer in shooting whatever you like. But places like, that James has set up with Bow Hunters America, we have a place that we can all support each other. And if you don't support, you're gone. And he's really making changes. I think we need some big names out there really showing real hunts nowadays. That's what Clay and I talk about all the time. Clay shoots some monster deer. And, huge. But sometimes it feels unobtainable for the average guy, the one that's going out in state land to maybe 3 hunts a year and that's all he gets. That when people start shooting average deer, it gets others excited. I shot my doe last year. What did he do? It was a doe. If I was a compound hunter, nobody cares. If I was shooting with a gun, nobody cares. But because I took my doe with a longbow, people were excited. Everybody would watch a traditional hunt, but not everybody wants to watch a gun hunt. I think that's why, traditional shooting is so accepted nowadays. That's just so much more challenging that everything is a trophy.
Well, man, is there anyone that you need to plug on here? Anybody that you're sponsored by or anything like that you need to talk about?
Nothing really. I use products because I like them. It's not because the sponsorship or anything like that. Like I joined up with MWD this year. And Nolan and Hunter, they're a small company out of Texas, and they're just really doing things proper. I call it proper, that they're supporting everybody. They're making a good product that is affordable. That's what I like about them. And all it is some stinky syrup that you don't need a lot of, and anybody can go out and use it. But as for plugging, like I said, it's just use what you like. I love Centaur bows, but if you're going to shoot a Tulkey whip or, a Bodnik, anything like that, we support everybody. The Broadhead War. I do have to say one thing about broadheads. Why are people shooting mechanical broadheads? I really don't understand it. Here's a question. What broadheads do you shoot?
I like the G5 Havocs. But, like you said, it's mechanical, and I've been having a lot of issues. Last year I had some issues with them opening, so I think I'm going to go ahead and change that too.
Yeah, I just figured, why not touch on it a little bit? One thing that I've learned in traditional, and learned really, really well, that cut on contact is the only way to go, and mechanical just doesn't make much sense. Yes, they work, like Rages are awesome, they've killed a lot of stuff. But having issues with, things not opening, things not penetrating properly because of the issues. When my wife and I, we first transferred over to traditional, we were uneducated in exactly how things work with a longbow. So we picked up some broadheads that we were shooting out of our compounds, and we had a giant pig hide. I'd killed a pig a few days earlier. So we took that armored plate that's on this hog, we set it up on a target, and grabbed our stick bows, and just started rifling broadheads at it. Every single broadhead bounced off of this hide. Every single one. I've never seen anything like it. It was mind-blowing. The only ones that would go through were fixed broadheads that were cut on contact. I understand we're shooting lighter poundage, but my thought is, why even shoot something that only works if you're throwing it at 1,000 miles an hour versus if you're going to throw light poundage and it still works, why wouldn't you want to use that at a heavy poundage? Just cut on contact is always the way to go. That's why I'm throwing these big giant heads. 2 1/8 inch wide head is huge. You'd think it wouldn't do anything, but it's heavy, cut on contact, it does its job, and it goes right through everything. We're actually trying to get a few people to start shooting these big heads at a compound, just to kind of see what would happen, how much damage is this really going to cause when you start throwing it out of a more efficient bow?
Yeah, man, that's something some of the listeners should definitely look into is those cut-on-contact broadheads.
So I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. I think it was awesome, and it's a podcast for the books. So I want to tell you guys about a little thing that's happening with the Devoted Outdoorsman. There is a big announcement that's coming up. If you haven't seen it on the Facebook page or the YouTube channel, there's something big about to happen. So you guys make sure you stay tuned to the Facebook page, the Devoted Outdoorsman on Facebook or the Devoted Outdoorsman on YouTube, because there's going to be a big announcement and I want everybody to know about it. And don't forget, grab yourself some Devoted gear. Get yourself a koozie or a decal. Put that stuff on your truck. Support the Devoted Nation. I hope you guys have a great week next week and have an awesome weekend. So tune in next Saturday for the next episode of the Devoted Outdoorsman's podcast.